Live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Where in the World. Sarah's off gallivanting around Italy somewhere, so I'm hosting today. This is Reid Coen, of course. You know me from Imprint Tours. We are featuring China this week, and my guest right now is Charlie Rawson, who is a UK resident. Am I getting that part right?
Yes, indeed. I'm based in Bristol in England at the moment and have been for quite a number of years now, about 7 or 8 years. It's the longest I've stayed anywhere for a long time.
Oh, okay. So good evening to you over there on the other side of the pond. Now, why would we have a UK citizen talking to us about China? Well, Charlie, it was an expat in Beijing for some time. So in a few minutes, we're going to dive into that and find out about her experiences there. Programming note, if you tuned in this morning, you saw that we had all kinds of technical difficulties. Dennis and I will probably try to rebroadcast our program on China Off the Beaten Track sometime in the future. So hopefully we'll get that sorted out. And I even have some pictures that I want to show with Charlie here a little bit further into the program. So fingers crossed that will work a little better. That's what seemed to put us into jeopardy, was the showing of images. I'm not really sure. I think that Sarah, I'm sure Sarah will continue to broadcast, but I think that the Where in the World programming is probably going to go on hiatus now because both Sarah and I are going to be abroad running tours for the next couple of months. So for those of you who've been tuning in regularly, there won't be any new programming going on apart from what both Sarah and I are doing from the road. Okay, enough nuts and bolts. Let's jump right in here, Charlie. Tell us the story. When did you end up living in Beijing? Why did you end up living in Beijing? What's the story?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And may I just say, the fact that you're having a hiatus because you're going to be on the road is just the most wonderful thing to hear after the 18 months that we've all had. So good luck with what's up and coming. But yes, back to China and Beijing. So I was at university down on the south coast in England. I was studying geography and international relations. Now, if that isn't the sort of degree that gets you ready for traveling and exploring the world, I don't know what is. But after my second year, I didn't know what I was going to do. And an opportunity came up for me to head over to Beijing and to work in an international school there. So that's the Dulwich College International Organization, which is just a fantastic school to work with. And they were based on the outskirts of Beijing itself. And as soon as I finished my studies, I had booked my ticket and I was leaving the UK behind. I was so ready to get out of the UK and get back on the road. In the interim period between school and university, I'd lived in Switzerland and I really just had that hunger still to get back out on the road. So I moved out there for 2 years. I arrived in an Olympic city, 2008. Absolutely the most wonderful time to arrive, of course, in a city. There's so much going on, but also it made it really accessible because they'd made English sort of duplications of many of the signs. So it made it more accessible than I know it was several years before, from reports I'd had from friends that live there saying, it was quite challenging linguistically. But as soon as the Olympics arrived, then of course that made it more sort of appealing and accessible to the international travelers.
I got to tell you, my first time in China was in 2017, and I had a group there. I had a guide with me the whole time. I didn't, so I didn't have to face those sort of obstacles. But I did do a lot of traveling on my own before and after, and that was only possible because of Google Translate. Even 10 years ago, I would have never launched off on my own in China. That would have just been a disaster. But having your phone and being able to say, where is the Great Wall, and hold it up and it says in Mandarin, what you hope is, where is the Great Wall, and not where is the little fence. It doesn't work perfectly every time. You're laughing, and maybe you've had some of those experiences. I'm just saying Google Translate is changing the world of travel, I think. So yeah. So, and now you're in the travel business. I know our viewers always like to know that story too. How did you get into the travel business? I mean, obviously you had that passion that, triggered with Switzerland and then China. But is that specifically what led you to the travel business, or were there other factors?
No, that's a really great question. Thank you, Reid. So it's really a combination of different things, and I have my parents to blame for a lot of it, I must say. I'm sure your daughter would have the same to say as well. But yes, it was from a very early age. I grew up in the hot air ballooning industry. Which is quite an unusual thing to say. So I've got hot air ballooning in the blood. And as a result of that, we got to travel internationally. Switzerland was one of those places. We went to international balloon fiestas, and I met people from all over the world. I traveled with my parents. And then on other occasions, sometimes my dad would go to Chile, or he would go to Cannes Film Festival to fly at these fantastic, spectacular events and meet people and come back with stories. And that really kind of set the bar. I wanted to do that sort of thing, travel, meet people. And as I've grown older and learned more about my family, going back further in time, my grandparents and great-grandparents, they were either born abroad or they lived abroad as expats as well, in India, in Africa, and also out in Asia. So it's really kind of a hubbub within the family that travel is certainly part of who we are. And I guess I didn't understand that at an early stage, but now I completely recognize that that's in my blood. And yeah, so getting into the travel industry itself, I was a travel agent when I came back from traveling. In fact, the first thing I did once I got back from China was to go back to university. So I got one university degree in geography and international relations, and then my second university degree is in fine art, because I really felt like talking academically about the world, it actually builds a barrier between you and many people. Whereas looking at the arts, the representation, the way people express themselves in these multiple and varied and inspiring cultures, that's how we cross-pollinate. So to study fine art for me was a really important piece of the puzzle, because it helps me interact with people on a much more sort of representative and historical way that isn't just about dates and names. So yeah, those are sort of some of the pieces of the puzzle. And then I became a travel agent when I moved down to Bristol, and I did that for several years. But really, the hot air ballooning is part of the international adventure travel scene. So I've been working, or I had been working, for Cameron Balloons, which is the biggest manufacturer of hot air balloons in the world, and doing sort of customer visits out to Myanmar and to Dubai and lots of other fascinating places. So traveling and work has always been something that's been heavily intertwined for me. So to become a guide was absolutely the right route. It inspired me from the get-go, and it ticks all the boxes. As you can see, I'm just absolutely buzzing by it.
Right. I got to hear more about this hot air balloon thing, though. Your parents were they pilots? Were they involved like you were on the business side? Tell us about that. That's just fascinating.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my family run a commercial hot air balloon company. So they fly passengers, fare-paying passengers, over numbers of landscapes all over the UK. So they're part of a wider organisation as well called Balloons Over Britain. And really, it's lots of family organisations that come together, and then they're represented within this umbrella organisation. And it's a wonderful way to support local family businesses whilst traveling in the UK and then seeing the wonderful landscape from above. So yeah, and that's been going on ever since, before I was born. They've been flying hot air balloons. My dad had, originally he was flying the Maltesers balloon. So I was also brought up eating lots of Maltesers, which is a delicious chocolate and malt snack over here that we have in Europe. I'm not sure if you guys have it in the States.
No, they're like malted milk balls for our American audience, only better. So that's what I would say. I got addicted to Maltesers when I lived in Switzerland. So nice connection there. Now, my own experience with hot air ballooning would be very limited compared to yours, but I've been fortunate in traveling all over the world. I have probably done it a half a dozen times. Interesting that you should mention Myanmar, because the BOB there, Balloons Over Bagan, you mentioned Balloons Over Britain, the Bob organization there, spectacular. That soaring over the hundreds of spires of pagodas there on the plains of Beijing in a hot air balloon at dawn is just one of those spectacular travel experiences. I'm going to guess that you've done it.
Indeed, I have, yes. And it was breathtaking. I mean, I've flown in lots of different places, but it is one of the most incredible places to fly. And of course, they're not flying there at the moment because of the situation. So we can only send all of our love and best wishes to everybody over there at the moment and hope that they can come out the other side strong.
Yeah, I absolutely loved Myanmar, and it was just opening up. I think it was 5, 6 years ago that I took a small group there. We just had a spectacular experience there, and what a shame that that's has been reversed again. I sure hope that Myanmar can open up again soon for tourism, because they need that, of course, economically, and what an amazing country all the way around. We could riff on that for quite a while.
Yeah, we definitely could. It's when it opens up again, it should definitely be at the top of people's lists as somewhere to explore.
Yeah, I'm gonna just give a plug for my friends in Myanmar there. Honorable mention goes to the valley of which said the opposite. I'm always turned around in Egypt, right? The opposite side of the Nile River from Luxor. That was my number
Valley
2
of the Kings.
hot air balloon. Have you done that one?
I haven't been there. No, that's still on the list of places to go. I haven't been lucky enough to fly there. Did you fly?
Absolutely. That was pretty magical in the same way. And it's all about what's below you, of course, and when you're looking at the vast temple of Hatshepsut, which is hard for me to say, all of those tombs of Valley, there's temples over there, temple ruins. You can see those gigantic figures of the Colossi of Memnon. There's so much to see, and the dramatic where when you're up in a hot air balloon, you can see for miles, and you're seeing miles of dunes of the Sahara that comes right up, and then there's this clear delineation. It just turns green, right, where they've been able to draw water and irrigation out of the Nile and irrigate the plains there on either side, and it's just there's like a line that squiggles along, green, brown. It's very, very dramatic. So you get the micro experience of, oh, look at that temple, and oh, look at that statue, and then you get this mega experience of just that perspective you don't get in any other way. So well, that's just fantastic. I've never met anybody from the hot air balloon world. So.
Yeah, we're quite a close-knit community, but equally, I haven't got my license yet, and this is the year. So I'm training hard at the moment, which is why I'm kind of a little bit offline. I've got lots of training to do, and I've got to check out, as we call it, this year, so that I get my license. I mean, it is a very boy-heavy industry, and I'm fighting it for the girls. I'm bringing it up, and I'm going to get my license.
Brava, that's what we want to hear. And I do recall now that's in the early days of the Guide Collective, you did some live streams from a hot air balloon. I was not making that connection till now. So yeah. You said it's a small community. Our pilot in Myanmar was Belgian. I just remember talking to him and finding out that he was from Belgium. So there you go.
Amazing. Yeah. And that's another fantastic way to travel and work, to be a commercial balloon pilot. So in case anybody's looking for a new industry to get into post-COVID, it's a great thing to do. And they always need good pilots.
All right. So before we leave the subject of our lives, our world, our travel world, what about the job of tour guide, the lifestyle that it provides? What is it that you most enjoy about that?
Oh, that is such a hard question, because there's so much that I love about the job.
You can take the next 45 minutes. Go.
Number one, it's people. It's the opportunity to meet people from all over the world, both travelers in the group, of course, and seeing that connection between a group grow and become a family, traveling through the landscape together and experiencing things together. And then, of course, connecting with the wider community, all of our, the people that we work with on tour, they become an extension of that family. And that is just the most wonderful opportunity to connect and learn and exchange and support, and to kind of review where you're at and what you want and who you are by keeping that interaction with new people, and exploring the world through other people's eyes. Yeah,
Nice.
that's definitely number one. Crikey, there are so many things. I love living on the road. I absolutely.
That sometimes ends up being on people's negative list, but carry on.
I think it must be my nomad soul, but yes, I absolutely love living on the road, out of a bag. It may seem counterintuitive somehow that, it's good to have a base as well. This is the first time. So as I was saying at the beginning, I moved sort of every 2 to 3 years, for a very long period of time. And no, it wasn't because the police were chasing me. It was just because I would arrive somewhere and then I would feel that need to move on again and have a new challenge. But I've been in Bristol now since 2013, and it really feels like home, which is wonderful to have a base. But I guess having that really strong and stable base here means that when I'm on the road, it doesn't feel too much of a challenge because I'm punctuating each of those trips by coming back here. So no, I'm really grateful to have this good home here, but I love being on the road and I've missed it so much. Yeah. So it's that sense of being, I guess, self-reliant in many ways and having this little bag, and that's it. That's all the stuff. You haven't got, souvenirs are lovely, photos are great, books are marvelous. But when you're on the road and everything you need is in that bag next to you and you've got your passport in your hand, and actually all you really need is the passport and your money, then, and your phone, of course, for your translating, then that's it. We're ready. We can have a bag that's just this big and hit the road, and it's just marvelous. And I find that really liberating. And and it's something which I share with people. No doubt you do as well. When we're on the road, you have that sense of, it's almost like a childlike inquisition. You're able to get out there and play with the opportunities as they arrive in front of you. And also I really love the idea of it being for a period of time. So for that period of time, it's clearly designated that you are exploring. And I guess that touches back into the fact that you're coming back home afterwards. Although longer periods of travel are also fantastic too. But tying that into guiding, I think the most wonderful thing when you're on the road is seeing people experience something for the first time and reliving your first time with them. It just sends, tingles. It's incredible. It's an amazing opportunity to see somewhere through somebody else's eyes, share that moment of excitement, and then talk about it again in that childlike way. Wow, did you see that thing? Whoa, that was just fantastic. Did you taste that thing for the first time? Or so all of those sort of sensational experiences. I suppose it's quite addictive.
Yeah, the vicarious experience. I know that carries all of us that are in this profession, because let's face it, there's an embarrassment of riches here where we get to see those big sites over and over and over again. And after a while, that's not a thrill. Actually, fairly quickly, that's not much of a thrill for us. But to be there with people for whom it's the first time, that's the wind in our sails. Absolutely. I love your terminology, nomad soul. I wrote that down. I don't know if I would say that I love being on the road, but it's never bothered me to live out of a suitcase. People are like, oh, after 4 weeks, I have to go home, or, because those of us that are US based, but, we're going to Europe and stringing together several tours. It never bothered me to be underway for 10 weeks, 11 weeks. You start to wear down a little bit. And once you have a family, you miss family. But really, that was the only thing. If I didn't have family at home, once my daughter was all grown up, I was in Europe once for 5 months in a row, right? And I was I was lucky to get out without the Schengen people throwing me in the hoosegow, but that's another story where I'm being checked at Frankfurt Airport.
We'll
And
come back to that another time.
yeah, that was, maybe I shouldn't be talking about those things in case I ever have to try to wiggle through after being overtime in Schengen. All right, usually I ask people, what do you least enjoy about your lifestyle? Is there anything you can identify and that you're willing to share?
I would suppose the only thing would be personal travel during certain seasons, when some people are like, oh, I'm going on holiday to see X, and you'll never get to see X really, because that's always when you're on tour. So it's probably just a clash of diaries. And of course, we do have the opportunity to choose when we guide, and every 5th year you could choose not to guide at that time. So the flexibility really is with us. But that would really be, just a clash of diaries, and feeling that you've double booked, or you could have double booked yourself. But no, I think there's always an opportunity to go back to those things and come back round and have an opportunity to go again. I guess the one thing would be weddings, friends' weddings. If you were to miss those, that would be pretty sad. But the same goes for ballooning. Balloonists can only go to a friend's wedding or party if it's windy or rainy. So
yeah, that's pretty near the top of my list. Is I've missed so many of the events of friends and family, funerals, weddings, things that you would otherwise absolutely participate in and want to participate in. That you miss a lot of that. There's no doubt about that. Okay, I do want to get to Beijing and China here, but I'm going to ask one more question before we get back to that. And that is, you get to work with Americans and Europeans. That's an assumption on my part, but assuming that I am correct, how do you find them to be different?
So I have quite a lot of American family. So the American sort of identity is a lot closer to home than me looking at it sort of abstractly, I would say. But one of the sort of identities that I always recognize and really value and admire with American travelers is how dedicated and resilient they are. And when they see something they really want, they're very purposeful about going for it. And that always is really inspiring, seeing people that are out to get something. And I always wonder whether that's something to do with having frontiers, moving and exploring and needing to kind of go out there and be decisive in a world where you're not really sure what's over the horizon. And I wonder if it goes back sort of through bloodlines, perhaps, to those early people that were moving across America and exploring, and whether that same sort of mentality is within everybody's consciousness, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. And you find that Europeans are not that way. Is that the flip side, or less so?
Yeah, well, I think we are perhaps not. Oh, it's difficult. I can only speak as a Brit. So, and obviously that's my positionality, both historically and culturally. So from my female white British perspective, I would say that in Europe, perhaps we are a little bit less go get it, perhaps. Maybe that yeah, it feels like a pretty big sweeping statement to make. Well, but I suppose maybe, historically, because in our countries we have much older properties and landscapes that are somehow directly linked to us. Maybe that means that there's it's hard to articulate. Yeah, not that we rest on our laurels. I don't mean that, but we're maybe a little more reserved, perhaps. But there's so many different identities in Europe. It's such a tough one to do. I'm thinking pretty much in a Western Europe identity, perhaps.
Sure. Yeah, maybe a way to say it would be a little bit more tradition bound, because traditions in European cultures are, typically hundreds and hundreds of years old, whereas in the United States, our whole country is only 250 years old. So, that might be one way to say that.
Yeah,
So
that resonates with me. Yeah. And that's a wonderful segue talking about traditions and the way that populations are associated to their landscapes through tradition.
right. So let's switch to that Beijing landscape then. What was the biggest cultural adjustment you had to make? Because in 2 years, you're there long enough that you've really got to adjust to that culture.
Yes.
What was the biggest adjustment you had to make?
Okay, this is a bit of a swing ball. It was coming home. That was the biggest cultural adjustment because I expected home to feel comfortable and normal. But of course, I had changed so much when I was away that coming home felt quite alien. So, yeah, that was the biggest because going away to somewhere, your expectation is that it's going to be different and it's going to be challenging. There's going to be language and food and all sorts of things that challenge you. But coming home, you think, oh yeah, this is my normal. This is going to take me back to where I feel comfortable. But that was not the case at all. I found it really hard coming back.
Hmm.
So yeah, that was the biggest cultural challenge or cultural shift that I felt. Although I came back via Indonesia and India, so I kind of felt prepared for that long journey home. But yes, out in China, one of the biggest cultural challenges. There's two that really stick with me. So the first one is if you're going to get in a taxi in Beijing, you need to be able to tell that taxi where you're going in Mandarin. And not only do you need to tell them the address, you need to tell them how to get there. So one of the first things I had to learn on my orientation in Beijing was how to direct a taxi. So they gave us these crib sheets of how to tell a taxi to go forwards and right and left and stop and wait. And at that time in Beijing, you had to know those things. Otherwise, a taxi driver would look at you and say, I'm not taking you.
So they don't know where things are.
No, because Beijing, when I was there, was 100 miles by 100 miles, Greater
Yes.
Beijing.
It's absolutely massive. And of course, that was probably pre at least easy GPS access. I mean, having it on your smartphone. I'm sure that's all changed since then. All you got to do is give an address now. But
Yeah.
wow, that is interesting. I know that when I was in London and I happened to be there back in 2019 when there was a cabbie strike, and I stopped and talked to the guys there by Westminster, and just to chat, find out, like I always do, what's going on here, what's the issue, right? And they were talking about how Uber is sort of undermining them, but then I learned from them just in casual conversation that the training that they have to go through so that they know London. So when somebody just gets in and says, I need to go to such and such, they don't, I mean, I'm sure nowadays they're using the GPS, but for many, many, many decades, those classic London cabs, the cabbie had to know how to get to where he was going and the best route and for time of day and whatnot. So interesting, quite different. Obviously, you're reporting from Beijing. And anything else? I mean, I remember when I lived in Switzerland, and it would drive me crazy if I didn't, if I needed a liter of milk, if I forgot until 6 o'clock in the evening, that was it. There was no 7-Eleven for me to go get a liter of milk. And I was relating to what you're saying about when you went home, because my little culture shock thing when I came back to the United States after 2.5 years in Switzerland was, oh no, I forgot to get milk. And then I was like, oh, the Safeway's open 24 hours. It was like, oh, so there was a little bit of that. So my reverse culture shock was like this tremendous relief. And my experience was, my overall experience of living in Switzerland was, I am an American through and through, and that's the place where everything is easy for me. So anyway, sorry, that was a bit of a tangent there. Do you remember what my question was? Because I've left it behind now.
Yeah, your question was about cultural challenges moving over there.
Yeah, well, any other examples like the taxi thing? These are fun things for us to learn about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I made a note of a second one here that I wanted to talk about. Hang on, bear with me 1 second. The other cultural challenge, oh yes, was me being vegetarian. And So I'm still vegetarian now, and it was always assumed that you were eating a vegetarian meal because you couldn't afford to eat meat. So I very quickly had to learn how to explain that I was vegetarian and that I didn't want meat or fish. Not that I couldn't afford meat or fish, because otherwise you got a sort of generous little sprinkling on the top of meat because they felt sorry for you.
Let's
Which was
keep
very lovely. I could see what they were trying to do. And I guess in both of these instances, they're really great examples of the fact that I had to pick up language quite quickly. And I absolutely relished that. I was fortunate enough to be working in a kindergarten as the English language speaker with 2 Mandarin teachers and then a class full of children that were learning both English and Mandarin. And some of them could already speak French or German or Cantonese because they were the children of expat families. So you had 4-year-olds, 3 and 4-year-olds that could speak 3 languages or understand 3 languages. And that was quite incredible, outstanding, inspirational, but also great fun because you didn't feel tricky or ashamed or a bit nervous about practicing your language with them. You just played. You played games, you sung songs. I can still play games in Mandarin, like "What's the time, Mr. Wolf?" and sing nursery rhymes. I still remember them all. And it's fascinating because my first year there, I was working in the kindergarten. And then my second year, I was running events as the event manager at the international school where we had arts events and theatre events, and it was fantastic. Again, lots of opportunities to orientate people. I was guiding in Beijing at the same time to do those orientation days and get people really grounded and to give them the local experience whilst they were over for the events. And it was really a wonderful opportunity to realize that the nursery rhymes I'd been learning had taught me the intonation of the language naturally. So I had learned without having to learn the tones for so many of the words, which was wonderful because it was more like a singing song sort of situation as opposed to sitting down with a book and learning the tones for each word. So learning it in situ, the language, was really facilitated by that need to do so and being able to play all those games with the children, which was really wonderful.
Yeah. And of course, Asian languages are so much more tonal than Western languages. And that's really hard for us typically. That's great. That was going to be one of my questions was, did you pick up some Chinese language? Had you studied any a little bit before you went? No.
No, I hadn't studied in advance. I had looked at a few things online, just to try and get a grasp of something, but learning it abstractly out of context, surrounded by nobody I knew that spoke Mandarin, was an incredibly difficult thing to try and do. So actually, I kind of just wrote that off. I think I spent some money on one of those training courses, the ones with all the CDs when we still had CDs. And then, yes, that didn't come to fruition. But learning in situ, I guess as a communicator, much like yourself, when you're in a situation, whether it's guiding or traveling, you work it out. And if a language is thrown into the mix, then you work out a way to muddle through. And I really enjoy learning different languages. I always find I'm a bit of a mimicker, which also means when I go traveling, even in the UK, I pick up accents, which can get me in a bit of trouble sometimes.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm totally relating to that because I am not gifted with languages. I don't pick them up easily. I don't learn languages easily, but I do have a very good ear for languages. So, if I've just been able to say hello, nice to see you, I can say it really well. And you said sometimes get in trouble. Yeah. I arrive in France and I say, bonjour Marie, ça va bien? And they forget that that's it. I'm done. I've used all of my French words in the first, and they launch off, and my eyes get big, and they're like, "Oh, that's right. You don't really speak French." So yeah. Same thing happened to me a lot in Switzerland. People would think I was Swiss if if I was speaking to a German person, I had such a heavy Swiss accent. They just assumed, and of course, Swiss German is sort of lacking in strong grammatical rules, shall we say. So any mistakes that I was making were forgiven already by a German speaker. So anyway, again, more digression. Okay, so favorite memories. What are your, what are your favorite memories from that time in Beijing? As many as you want.
Oh, crikey. Okay, so in 2009, I was stood up on the roof of a bar next to the Drum and Bell Tower, watching Chinese New Year fireworks go off all around me. And the sky was just alight with fireworks. It was absolutely incredible. Also, a little bit dangerous at times. I had to kind of watch out on the street as there were children throwing fireworks into the air and it was bouncing off walls and things. So, definitely had to kind of be on the alert. But no, up on this rooftop watching the fireworks, it was a fantastic culmination of the whole month that had been leading up to that. And of course, that's a wonderful time to be there because during Chinese New Year, it's not just the one night. There's a period before where there's fireworks every night, of course. I don't know if you've been there during Chinese New Year, but it also means that lots of the factories are shut for that period, if not 99.9% of them. So if there were any pollution issues in any of the places that you've been to, it totally blue skies during Chinese New Year, which is absolutely incredible. So to see the fireworks, it was an incredible experience. Clear skies, stars above. So yeah, I really, really remember that as one of those sort of tangible moments. I'm going to have to say the Great Wall. It's, you know, it's a big hitter. It's behind me at the moment. And just taking steps along the Great Wall, it's like nothing else. And you can find parts of the Great Wall which are really quite secluded and you're the only person on it. This is Mutianyu, I think, behind me. And that's a busier area, or Badaling, that's another quite busy area. So if you get there early in the morning, that's the best time to see it when it's not so busy. But there are other areas when I've taken a local bus out towards the wall and then hiked up towards it and there was nobody else there. Right. In fact, I camped up just underneath the wall one evening with some friends. And that was another incredible experience, waking up with the sun rising, surrounded by the Great Wall of China.
Yeah. Yeah, I was very, very lucky. I've been to the Great Wall a total of half a dozen times, I think, and never once was I there when it was just swarming with people. I never had that sort of only me experience that you're describing, but I certainly had no days where I was swarmed, which that is saying something in China about any destination, of course. Yeah. I was also lucky enough I saw the eastern terminus where it goes into the sea. I saw the western terminus where it ends in a river way out in Gansu province somewhere. So I really, stamped my Great Wall ticket very, very thoroughly. Okay. Hey, let's talk about some of the big sites a little bit. I've got the Forbidden City behind me. That's the Great Throne Hall that you can see there, and you can see all of the mostly Chinese people lining up to go up to see the throne there. Tell me about your experiences. Did you right away go out and see the Temple of Heaven and the Great Wall and the Forbidden City, or are you like so many people that once you lived in a town, you didn't really go out and see those things that much?
That is a very good point. And so I was really lucky when I joined the school. So when I joined Dulwich College International, they facilitated orientation days, which is what I was then part of for so many other events and orientation for new students and new teachers in the future. And that was a wonderful way to really feel embedded. You've arrived after the jet lag's worn off, then you go and explore with the other new teachers, which was a really great experience because immediately it gives you those kind of markers, what to orientate yourself around. And of course, orientation in Beijing is outstanding because you've got the central axis, which the whole thing unfolds from, and all of the main sites are on that central axis, even the Olympic Village. So once you start to get your bearings, then you're able to start navigating and exploring yourself. But you're absolutely right. When you live somewhere for a period of time, the only sort of sideline time I made for going to the Great Wall, which was about an hour north of where I lived, so very close indeed, was when people came to visit. And
Right.
that's when I would go and check those places out again, or when I was leading a tour, an orientation tour for those who were visiting through the school. So, no, I was really fortunate to have opportunities to go within my working context, but also then lots of family and friends came to visit me. So that was another good opportunity to head up to the wall. But I think my favorite site in Beijing, of the big sites, we're saying, is the Temple of Heaven. I absolutely love it there. There's the Whispering Wall. You've got the Temple for Good Harvests, which is the circular 3-tiered on that marble base. It's just incredible and talks about the way in which the world was created. And when you go inside, the different numbers of the pillars and the ceiling and the architecture within there, as well as the illustrations and the artwork, is absolutely incredible. And it connects so fervently into the beliefs within Chinese culture. So it's a really wonderful way to not only physically orientate, but culturally orientate. And I absolutely love it, as well as all the dancing and exercise that takes place in the park around it too.
Okay, I was trying to pull up a picture of that while you were talking about it, and I'm having that technical difficulty. Maybe it's something on my end. For my viewers that weren't with me this morning, whenever I tried to show images, it was like there wasn't enough bandwidth. So maybe at the end here, we'll pull up some images of what Charlie was talking about there, because it really is a beautiful, beautiful structure and complex there, right in the middle of a huge park. And you arrive and people are doing Tai Chi, and I mean it's not like a hermetically sealed. It's right in the middle of Beijing life. That's kind of the point I wanted to make. What about did you travel beyond Beijing? Did you go out and see some of the other parts of China? And what did you most enjoy of China once you left Beijing?
Okay, so two things. But first of all, before we move on to those, I must share with anybody that's going to go to the Temple of Heaven, before you go through the South Gate, on the right-hand side is this little alleyway, and you go down there and get the most delicious youtiao. And youtiao is these deep fried, long sort of dumplings, or like breadsticks or churros.
Kudos.
Yeah, a bit like churros. And then you have them with a bowl of sweet soya milk. And it's warmed up and you dip it in. It's a traditional local breakfast. And it was my absolute favorite thing to do before I went into the Temple of Heaven. Go and get a little brekkie in there and then head in through the South Gate.
Well, I wish we'd have had you along in 2017 when we did China the first time. That's just the kind of insider thing that we do the same job. You want to have your people have those sort of inside experiences. That would have been great. So
yeah,
anyway.
Next time. So outside of Beijing, so I went up, I was really fortunate. Well, first of all, I did some traveling down in the south on my own. I flew down to Kunming, and then, which was a wonderful experience in itself, because flying internally in China on domestic flights, you have exercises that everybody does mid-flight together. I don't know if you ever experienced that, Reid.
Yes, yeah.
So that was absolutely outstanding.
It was sort of alarming for me the first time, I had to tell you.
Yeah, that was it was a shock, but I participated, of course. And then on arriving in Kunming, I then traveled out to the east to Guizhou. And Guizhou is really not a very touristic region at all. So it's not as far as Guilin, and it's similar sort of karst landscape with the big rock structures. And the bus was just weaving its way around this landscape. And it was just a little bus that probably had 30 seats on it, a local bus that was just traveling along the local regional roads. And I had chosen to go east instead of west out of Kunming, because I knew that west, there were a lot of fantastic sites, but it was quite touristic. And I decided it was time for me to challenge my Mandarin and to get on the road and to head to places where people definitely did not speak English. And I looked at China when I had my summer off from the international school, and I had all these weeks of holiday to use. And I thought, how on earth am I going to choose where to go? How am I going to just sift through the options to start with? So I decided to use waterfalls as my bullet points. And I just picked waterfalls. Didn't matter how touristy or how well accessed they were, that would be the way that I would navigate. So I picked waterfalls and I used those to get me through the landscape. And it was just the most incredible way to experience the landscape, because it wasn't a specific route. It was quite experimental, and I was having to use local transport, and I really had to up my game on the Mandarin front, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Did you get down to, is it Detian? Am I saying that correctly? The waterfall that's down there by the Vietnamese border?
I did indeed. Yeah. So I headed down to the border itself, where you can walk over the border into Vietnam. And everybody else in the little mini microbus that I'd gone with, that I'd met in the hostel, we'd hired this little bus to get there and back. They all walked across and were super excited because they didn't have passports to leave China, some of them. So it was their only opportunity to go across the border and buy Vietnamese goods. So for them, it was like a little foray into Vietnam, which of course, geographically it was, but they kind of let that little gray area exist. So you can go over and have this little market experience and eat Vietnamese food. And no, that was really wonderful experience to go across the border and go to the waterfall there. And then a few weeks later, I actually jumped on a more official bus that took me across the border and down to Hanoi.
I've not been to Detian. That's one of those places I've seen pictures of, and it's, you know, I've developed what I call the OBT itinerary, the off the beaten track itinerary, 2 of them. And even with, 22 or 24 days of travel in China, that's a little bit too far track for me to have included in any tour. But someday I'll get down there, because my daughter would tell you I'm a bit of a waterfall nut, and
okay.
I love a waterfall. I don't know what it is. Somebody should psychoanalyze me and let me know what that's all about.
Well, what star sign are you? I'm a water sign, so I always blame it on that.
I'm a Scorpio.
Me too. Huh.
Is that
That's
water
it.
sign? I don't know too much about that. But there you go, though. Another connection that makes sense. I love Kunming. Did you get to the Stone Forest?
Yes.
That's one of those places that Dennis and I were trying to talk about this morning with our images. Spectacular, completely overwhelmed with Chinese tourists. I mean, you're going to share it with a gazillion people, but there's a reason for that. It's spectacular, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And in fact, the journey to get there, for me, and I had bumped into a French traveler, another solo female traveler, very similar ages. We were both in our early 20s. And she had studied Mandarin at university. So my sort of colloquial nursery rhyme Mandarin and her university Mandarin together got us through those few days. And we actually jumped in a lorry that had sort of 30 people hitchhiking in it. And that's how we got to the Stone Forest, because we couldn't find a more direct or public transport route to get there.
Yeah. Hey, you've got to go back now that there's Google Translate. I mean, it is life changing, Charlie. I mean, you really, everything will be so much easier than. I mean, you had some Mandarin, so you weren't helpless. I would have been abjectly helpless without it. So, and it was. I already alluded to the fact that. I mentioned that I saw where the eastern end of the Great Wall goes into the sea. They call that the Dragon's Head. It's a very good descriptive name for it. I was negotiating. I got off a train. I'm negotiating with the driver. I want to go see the Dragon's Head, and I'm typing it in, and his face is screwing up, and he types something in his. He says, "You want to go see the chicken?" So then you have to think about, how can I say this in a way that's more direct or more clear, and you get there, but there are those funny misstep moments as well.
Absolutely. I suppose another place that I want to mention before we move on from this question is Harbin, up in the northeast, where the ice festival is. and it has a really strong Russian influence up there because of the railway line, and a lot of the workers were located in Harbin. So aesthetically and architecturally, it's a fascinating place. They've also got a really wonderful symphony hall with fantastic architecture that's recently been built. But the city itself during the ice festival is just breathtaking. I mean, I don't know, have you been to Harbin?
No, I have not.
So
And when you were there, were you there during the ice festival? Because that's
yeah.
the way to go, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Go during the ice festival. It's incredible. I can't think of the words to really describe it because they build. So there was a steam train that was built from snow. There were these huge, beautiful facades that were made. There's a big international competition of ice carving. Of course, all of the rivers in the area and the lakes are frozen solid, and you can walk across them instead of taking the boat or taking a bridge. You walk across these incredible landscapes that are frozen, and you see the locals fishing, and they've drilled down the holes. And sometimes you can go, not ice skating, it's more shoe shuffling across the ice lakes. But it's just a wonderful opportunity, and I really loved it. It was something completely different to Beijing, and I think culturally it feels quite different as well because it's near the frontier, of course.
Right. You know, that's so great to hear because, you know, it's sometimes it's difficult to judge a destination theoretically, you know, from reading the guidebooks and stuff. And I have to say that I've been to enough festival type things that disappointed me that I was sort of, no pun intended, I was sort of cold to the idea of Harbin. And I'm talking just in my mind and in my personal planning. And I mean, when I go back to China with a group again, I'm going to give myself a month to go out and explore the third of China that I still haven't seen, that looks just amazing just from the pictures and the guidebooks and whatnot. But Harbin wasn't really on my list. So I appreciate your enthusiasm. I will have to reconsider that. And by the way, I really, those people who know me well know that I think the voices of the universe need to be listened to. And that's literally sometimes how I decide where I want to travel. And even where I want my company to travel is when all of a sudden I start hearing about a place. Like, so if in the next 6 months I run into other people talking about Harbin, I'll know that I need to go there, right? Right now, it's just the kernel of an idea.
Absolutely. Yeah, the universe will tell you if you need to go.
Yeah, I really believe that. So,
Me too. Yeah, absolutely.
all right. Maybe it's because we're Scorpios. I don't know.
Yeah.
What's the most important cultural tip that you would have for a non-Chinese visitor to China and Beijing?
Okay. I would say that learn how to barter with patience.
Make it fun. That's what I always say.
Make it fun. Enjoy it. Exactly. So I wrote that down, in fact, barter and have fun with it, because it's something completely different. We're certainly not used to it in the UK. That's something when my family came out to visit, they found really challenging. They saw me bartering with people. And that they found it really culturally jarring, but it was something. It was kind of a game, and participating in that game is part of the cultural experience. So yeah, certainly, I would say approach bartering with a sense of fun. Yeah,
That's a good one, because it's expected too. I mean, you're not taking advantage of people that have less than you, which I think is part of the American resistance to that. Is just give the guy 10 euros for the belt, you know. It's like, but I can get it for 5, you know.
Yeah, and I think there's participating in that, you get something else from it that is and yeah, I think it's really important to do. So yeah, that's definitely one of them. Oh, crikey. I have a map that's up to date. China, Beijing, the whole of China is changing so quickly. So if you're not using a digital map, make sure that the map you do have is up to date, because I know all of the maps I have from when I lived there are so far out of date. The subway system now is massively extensive. It was big when I was there, and now the subway comes all the way out to where I used to live, and we only had taxis and buses. So yeah, make sure that your reference points, and this, I mean, coming out of a COVID year, or maybe COVID 2 years, we're all going to need to make sure that our references and our resources are up to date when we travel next. So I suppose that ties really nicely into that.
You know what they're doing in the Bay? Well, even my information is now 4 years old, but you know, you might be surprised to know this. In the Beijing metro, they now have videos running all the time instructing the Chinese people how to wait for their turn. Right? I thought you might say that about the cultural tip, that, you know, the Chinese people have an entirely different idea about waiting in lines and being polite and you know, and bumping and jostling and stuff. They don't say a word because there's 1.2 billion of them, and they've all grown up in environments where that's just life, bumping, jostling, being noisy, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, back to the Berlin subway. I was fascinated because they're in the early stages, which means it's not having any effect or very little effect yet, right? Here's this video right above where the train is going to stop and the door is going to open, and they show you how you should line up in 2 lines. And when the doors open, you go in, you file in, you know, and when the train arrives, there's just a big crush, like there always has been. But you know, I so admired the Chinese. They're working on all those things. Yes, the pollution is bad, but I saw more wind farms and more solar farms than I've seen anywhere else in the world. And I know that they're constantly tearing down old, polluting, coal burning electrical foundations, and they're replacing them with you know, better technologies that are less polluted. They're working very hard towards being carbon neutral. They're so far away from that. It's still a huge problem, but they're absolutely working on it in a way that we're not in the West. I was impressed.
Yeah, and they're looking to be carbon neutral by 2060, I believe. But their population is ginormous. But when you look at their pollution, carbon dioxide per capita, it's about half of that of an American citizen. So of course their absolute figure is more than twice, and that's what we have to address. But per capita, it's not, it's, you know, it's relative. So it's just there's so many people there, and it's such a big place. But no, they've been invited, I know, to the COP26, which is the conference that's taking place on environmental sustainability and you know, how we're going to all move forwards, and that's going to be in Glasgow in November this year. So hopefully they have a representative that comes. I don't think they've responded yet, but fingers crossed they'll be there.
Well, we're just about out of time here, Charlie. I want to make sure, was there anything that you had in your mind going into this little coffee chat that you definitely wanted to share with our audience about Beijing or China in general that we didn't get to? Is there anything on your mind?
I guess the only sort of parting comment I would say is, I lived there for 2 years and would go back in an instant. I loved working over there, and I have had opportunities to go back and do contracts over the last few years and have snapped those up. So if you get the opportunity to go to China, go and explore it for yourself, because it's an incredible place. Yes, there's a cacophony of color and the culture is overwhelming to start with. If you have the opportunity to go for a slightly extended period, then that cultural shock, of course, also isn't quite so big, and you have time to, you know, not assimilate, but you're able to acclimatize and to really start to see people individually instead of just the big boom. But yeah, if you have the opportunity to go to China, go. It's a wonderful place filled with fantastic people with so much to share.
Yeah. Oh, I love your enthusiasm. Thank you for saying that, because when I went to China, I went because I had, 30 people that wanted me to take them. And I thought, okay, here's a business opportunity. It really was not high on my bucket list of places to visit. I thought my expectations were based on what you were talking about, like, big, bustling, crowded place and blah, blah, blah. It absolutely knocked my socks off. I've never been more impressed with a place. more excited about what I saw there. And like I keep saying, as much the big famous places as the ones that we typically as Americans have never even heard of, like Kunming and what's around there. I mean, I'm just so excited. I so pray that those are successful tours post-COVID when we get to do them, because I just want to show people what there is there. It's very exciting. So thank you so much, Charlie. This has been delightful. Again, I love your enthusiasm. That's a perfect place for us to sign off. So for our viewers, thank you for tuning in. I've been so enamored by what Charlie was sharing. I haven't once checked the Facebook page to see if anybody had any comments. I'll do that straight away. If you have questions for Charlie, I'll forward them on to her. I know she'd be delighted to answer them. Thank you again, Charlie, for being with us and sharing your enthusiasm for China. It's just wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Speak soon.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.